So, here on Missed Apex podcast, we like having a punt at some analysis. We fancy ourselves as armchair strategists, and we've watched things long enough to make a reasonable guess. And our guesses, although often wrong, are different enough that we're able to have a debate and a fight about it, like when Matt incorrectly says, this year's Renault's year, or he says, this year's Renault's year, Ocon's gonna win, and we all get to tell him he's wrong. So, you see, our weakness is somewhat of a strength, but it's also very much a weakness as well. So we like to bring you opinions from people who know what they're talking about occasionally. We drag them kicking and screaming from the heart of motorsport to my shed. So today I'm talking to a very interesting young man who is already an established voice in the feeder series comms box, as well as commentating on BBC 5 Live for Formula One, a rising star in F1 media. It's Harry Benjamin. Welcome to the shed.
Thank you very much. What a pleasure to be here in the shed. You pick me up far too much. I know absolutely nothing. I just guess.
Well, that can't be true, though, because you have to know all the things to be excited and informed at the start of a race. And listening to your beginning of race commentary, you don't seem to skip a beat. So you know exactly which car is which, who we're meant to be watching, and there's no pause, and it all comes out in one. And I can tell you do not have to fake that enthusiasm for motorsport.
Oh, no, not at all. The enthusiasm comes very naturally. Okay. Well, I do a lot of homework and hard work when it comes to particularly Formula 3. You know, that's hard when there's 30 cars on the grid and, you know, half of them look the same and they're all new drivers and they're young. So you don't quite know that much about them. And then they will come hurtling down to turn one and you've got to try and call it. And I think it was Bahrain last year, my first proper Formula 3 race, where I was on my own. I didn't have a co-commentator who would normally be able to pick up on all the other stuff. I didn't have Alex Brundle to pick up on the other stuff that was going on in the background. So I was like, right, I've got to somehow be able to call this entire race on my own. And it was Formula 3. So it was absolute carnage at the same time. And the first race of the season. So you're still getting your bearings and things like that. But I do a lot of homework. I always say to people, it's like revising for your exams. You know, I make lots of notes and I've got spreadsheets and all this kind of stuff. So I get very bogged down in all that.
And it's just a way of communicating it to the casual viewer. Like you might know, but you have to remind yourself like, oh, poor chair, that's the green car, by the way. And having to build a story and a narrative whilst also following everything. I mean, I've done a little bit of go-kart commentary back in the days where there was very little commentary talent around. And it is blindingly difficult. I remember doing a race where they just forgot to give me the driver lists. So I was just commentating pretty much blindly off a timing sheet going, well, I think that guy's Derrickson. But yeah, so if you don't have a team around you, I'm assuming that David Croft and Jack Nicholls have swarms of people around them. How supported are you guys out there in the feeder series?
Well, I think I'll probably speak on behalf of Jack here, having done the BBC commentary as well. It's very, very small. Yeah. It's a small team. You know, he's not getting as much support as Crofty will be. In terms of Formula 3, I think I've done some other niche series as well, like Euro Formula Open and GT Open, and those ones, you know, you've got nothing. You are on your own.
You get parachuted
and so
in.
Obviously. Literally. And Formula 3 is obviously a bit more mainstream and it's supported by Formula 1. You know, it's all FOM backed and it's the same production crew who do it. So, and they have a whole team, you know, PR team and everything controlling all that. So I do get lots of stats and facts through, and I do feel a lot more supported, and especially if I'm alongside. I think last year we had a rotation of Alex Brundle, Jordan King, Alice Powell, you know, people who I consider they're the experts. I'll ask them the question. People don't want to know what I think. It's them. They're the important people. So yeah, you are supported. There's just, in this modern day world, there's just so much information and things move at a million miles an hour. It's hard to keep track of all the changes, especially now that in F3, you know, all 30 drivers can have Instagram. They're all doing something different. And in a 45-minute practice, you know, you might want to bring that up at times if there's not much else to talk about. And you've just got to try and keep a track of it all, and how you pronounce their names, where they're from, how old they are. All these kind of things weigh on your mind.
This is why I was praising the Sky team for their coverage of the F1 testing, which is about 9 hours a day, 3 days in a row, with actually not an awful lot happening. And I've done 24-hour endurance races where, you know, I was actually on a track where, you know, you can't see anything because you were too far away and there weren't lights at night that sufficiently helped you see the track. but you still have to talk, you still have to fill. So there's that gap between just messing around and having the audience think, are they taking this seriously? But you can't also just go, yes, and here comes car number 4 again, and I can't tell anything.
It's test match special coverage, isn't it? It's I actually really enjoyed it. I was a bit jealous of them. I would like to be in that coverage box, because it's probably quite hard, but also, you can have a bit of fun. It is just testing, you need to commentate on every lap. I think one of my favorite moments was watching Jolyon Palmer commentate on his own lap from 2016 in a Renault around Bahrain, which was brilliant. So just hilarious, his commentary on himself. So that I think F1's loosening up, and has been loosening up over the last couple of years as well in general. So it's quite, I think it's more accessible that way, and it's more enjoyable to watch as well.
Yeah, you can't take yourself too seriously. I mean, look, we're just going to get deep into F1 media coverage, but I think one of the standout presentations was the Channel 4 team a few years back, when they had Simon Jones leading that. Steve Jones, yeah. Out and out kind of entertainer, and they just brought this very wild entertainment style, and like, don't take that presentation too seriously. But obviously when the racing starts, then you knuckle down.
Absolutely, I love Steve Jones. I think he's brilliant, and I think Channel 4 wanted somebody who wasn't an F1 expert, who wasn't a nerd about it, but who could bring that entertainment. And he's clearly become more and more knowledgeable as years have gone by. So Channel 4's lineup is brilliant, I think. And F1 TV are amping up their own broadcast alongside Sky, and it's a bit of a golden era really in coverage. But on the other side, if you're a commentator, if you make a mistake, everybody, it will call you out on it. Someone
else is ready to take your job as well. I don't want to put too much pressure on, but saying, as much as we love watching the feeder series to see who's going to be the next F1 star, we kind of do that a little bit. Sorry to pile the pressure on with the junior series commentators as well. You got Alex Jacks, who's going off and doing great things with Channel 4, and then you see yourselves and Chris and Alex Brundle, and you go, oh, which one of those guys is going to be next? And you're all watching David Croft to see if he has trips and falls. Well, I don't think he can. I don't think he can do the broadcast. I'm ready.
Obviously there is a little bit of that in all of our minds. I think we'd all be lying to each other, but there is almost like an invisible queue, maybe, I don't know, or
for sure
what happens next, who goes up. But at the end of the day, you don't know either. Like, I never actually really planned on being a commentator. That was never really the plan. I wanted to be more of the anchor and a host. Which I still want to do. I love doing the commentary, absolutely love it, and I was petrified to do it the first time. I still remember the first time I did a practice commentary. So here you go, talk about this. So I talked about this the other day. Alex Jakes had just announced he was stopping doing Formula 3. And I was talking to F1 already at the time. And I thought, okay, I'm not a commentator, but this is a good moment. So I ripped a Formula 2 race off of YouTube from about 3 years ago.
Nice.
Austria, on my laptop. And I had a little sort of handheld mic, and I watched the race a few times. And then I was like, right, okay, I'm going to do some commentary on this race. Just do the first 10 laps, thinking that would be easy. And I couldn't even get round the first lap without running out of breath, without knowing what to say. And I was just sat at home in my room trying to do it. And then once I'd got cobbled together, 2 minutes, the file was so big it completely destroyed my laptop at the same time. And I was like, oh my God. But I managed to cobble enough together. And I couldn't send it. I couldn't export the video. So I basically played the video on Premiere Pro, because that was just about doing it, and filmed it on my iPhone as close up, so it looked like it filled up the whole screen. Pressed play, filmed it, cropped it on my phone, and then emailed it to F1 and said, hey, I've just done a commentary demo for you. I don't know if it's of interest. Didn't really hear much, and then a few 6 months later, they rang me and said, do you want to do Porsche Super Cup? And then I got the F3 shot to do. Alex hadn't stepped back from F3, he stepped back from Porsche, and he was leaving F1 to do Channel 4. That was the reason. But then he stopped doing Porsche Super Cups. Then I got the Porsche Super Cup job, and then obviously I think he got COVID for one of the races that year, and I got the F3 shot there. So
we'll pretend you weren't celebrating the fact that he got COVID and you had to step in. Well, we'll pretend you were in tears about it. But I've been like that, sat in a radio station, coffee room, having a laugh with another presenter. Oh, we're great mates, aren't we? I want your time spot. And
Alex texted me the day I got F3, and he went, so that Austria audition went well then, didn't it? And I was like, yeah, it did all right, Alex. Cheers. But I mean, you do get on. I don't know, I'm not best friends with him, but Alex, we chat and we've been out for coffee. He's given me advice, all these kind of things. So because I think he's the next best thing, everyone, he's massive. And,
Alex Jakes. I keep saying Jakes.
Yes.
Yeah.
You say Jax, then
I keep saying Jax,
how to say his name for a while, but everyone calls him Jakesy, so I just went with that. And he's a brilliant commentator. He's commentator of the year and things like that. So you don't get that for doing nothing. But it is a bit like the driver market. Sometimes
100%,
we're all in Formula One. You don't know who's going to have the seat for next year. I didn't know what I was going to do. Didn't think I'd have F3 last year. That was all quite a quick turnaround. And then to get the F1 call up so quickly into sort of my career, I suppose, was a massive shock.
You can call it a career if you want. And I found the coverage actually of you doing that F1 for the first time on the BBC coverage. And my goodness, you wouldn't have known. You wouldn't have known. I think you spoke for 85 minutes from the start line without taking a breath, and it was it was brilliant. But speaking of the start of a race, like I've been watching F1 for years, but in well over 30 years of watching, that moment before the cars pull away, and that moment where anything could happen, you don't know the order, you're trying to see where the drivers you're looking out for are. That moment still brings me stress and tension and anxiety, and it pauses time. I swear there's just a moment where they pause time before the cars pull off. But I'm sure you don't have to fake that kind of anxiety and tension when you're commentating, but you've got to somehow talk us through it.
Yeah. Oh God, no. The adrenaline that pumps through your veins, especially I think on the BBC coverage, they still play the chain, and that's what you do the grid to. Yeah. So you just come off the back of doing the grid with the countdown of the chain, so you're buzzed from doing that. And, I've also got people chatting in my ear. I've got a producer doing this. I've got 5 Live. You might be on the main 5 Live, or you might be on 5 Live Sports Extra, in which case you've got to provide updates and this, that, and the other, and timings. And then you're waiting for the last car to come on the queue. Then Jenny wanted to say something. She put her hand up and talk. Or Mark Priestley at the time, who was alongside me, he wanted to say something just before. And then I'm thinking, don't muck it up, because I've got my little thing that I say at the start, and I've got to time that right with the lights. So it's like, don't muck it up. Especially the Australian Grand Prix was my first at Formula One race. So, and we were doing it because we were doing it remotely. So that's 4 a.m. in the morning at UK time. So you're a bit, your adrenaline's right there. But I suppose something kicks in, like broadcaster mode kicks in, and you just sort of go a bit narrow, and you go, right, I'm here to do a job. You're not looking at your notes anymore because you're calling the race. And you're just keeping a track of the action.
I call it the broadcast bubble that I have around. When I see people
that's exactly it.
Yeah, when I see I have a guest and they're nervous in studio, and I say, "Don't worry, you're in the broadcast bubble. Your wife's not giving you a hard time. The cat's not sick. You're protected from the outside world." But despite your incredible CV already and my incredible jealousy, the one thing that I really wanted to talk to you about, and this might seem odd, is when you were a runner for the BBC, and you tweeted about it. You were finding drivers on the grid for Jenny Gow and Alan McNish to interview, and that is just it's one of the most magical seeming things on TV, is that time where everyone's on the grid, the engines are starting to fire up, but it always looks like chaos on those interviews. Please tell me what it was like being a runner, trying to interact with these drivers who presumably don't really know who you are as a media personality at the time, don't necessarily want to talk.
Yeah, scary. It was very cold as well. It was back in 2016, I remember. But it helped because I had a big jacket on that said BBC, so that helps, always gets you a little bit further across the line than somebody without one. It was 2016, so I can't remember it exactly, but I remember I'm quite tall. I'm 6'5", and the first thought I had was, God, drivers are small. Yeah, everyone's like a jockey, and I could see the whole grid. And Felipe Massa, I think, was there at the time, so we grabbed him quickly, and he was really nice and up for a chat. And because it was the BBC, obviously we've got the British angle. So I don't think Lewis was on the scene, but Jensen, I think, came and had a chat because he was down in 17th position for qualifying. So I think we managed to grab him on his way to do the anthem. and we might have got Palmer as well at the time, but I think we did get Palmer at the time. But also it's trying to find celebs as well, and it's radio, so you don't have to worry about cameras or anything like that. But I remember doing my utmost to try and keep out the way of bloody Martin Brundle, who just gets everywhere. And I had so many people send me screenshots of me in the background of Martin's grid walk on Sky, which was kind of a bit weird. And then I think we got Anthony Joshua. We had a chat with Anthony Joshua, the boxer, and I did the most embarrassing ever. He seemed like a really nice bloke, and Jenny had just finished chatting to him, and he went, "Oh, cheers, guys." And Jenny sort of then made to go away, and then he said, "Oh, thanks, mate." And I went in with like he sort of made to put a handshake, I thought. So I went in with the hand open for a handshake, and he then went in with the fist bump and very nearly did the whole wraparound and just about avoided it with some weird sort of side kind of knuckle thing. And I just remember, cheers, mate, walking away thinking, oh my God, that was Anthony Joshua. And I've just sort of weirdly sort of fist bumped him. Yeah. So that was a bit weird. Yeah.
So tell me how
but
it
was
works.
an amazing experience.
Because I watch the Sky coverage, and you see Martin Brundle on there, and people either don't want to talk to him or they have periods where they can't find someone. The grids are a lot busier now, obviously, as well.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you've got a producer running around, or was it like down to you to locate someone to talk to?
No, the producer in that case, and still is the case, was up in the commentary box.
Wow.
I imagine Sky do have one, and they probably got a couple of people on the ground. And also, you can pre-agree with PR teams to say, can we grab them on the grid for 5 minutes? So there can be some pre-agreements. But for the 5 Live, it was very much a grab somebody and go. The beneficial thing about the radio coverage is that they can't see you just wandering around filling for time, and we had Alan McNish there, so Jenny's there describing the scene, obviously, and making really in depth, and the commentary are getting involved as well. It's a very different broadcast style actually to what you see on the TV, which is what I love about doing it. It's so different to TV. So that was the kind of case there, and then you got to clear the grid fairly quickly. You got to get out the way and get out of there, and don't. I was so petrified about bumping into somebody or a driver or stepping on a front wing and breaking something and getting out of the way of a car, and I just felt like, oh God, I need to get out of the way, and so big, like a big guy. I was just trying to just keep alive. And then before you all knew it, it was over, really. Obviously managed to get a good selfie back in the day, no beard and massive sunglasses on my face. But it was a hell of an experience for me. And one I'm very grateful for that team allowing me. It's the BBC team, but it's done by an independent production company, which at the time was a company called USP, and I'd been the intern there, and they knew obviously I was an F1 fan, and I got called on Friday to be like, can you come and have a chat? Can you come and be a runner for us this weekend? Which obviously I go, yes, I'm there 100%. So it was everything I could have possibly dreamed of. I don't think I've been on the grid since, funnily enough, because if you're in commentary, you're shoved in the booth, hidden away.
Yes, you are. Yeah, that company. I just remember I actually a couple of years after that, I had an interview to take over the producer role. I didn't get it. The guy said to me, goes, "No, I think you're going to try and muscle in and do presenting." And he says it's not a good fit for you. And I went, "Oh, okay, there you go." Bit of
They've gone under now.
Bit of internal gossip. Yeah, I know. I'm aware. Although I did manage to surprise Jack Nicholls by sending him a selfie of me sat in his commentary chair. He said, what the hell?
I bet he loved that.
How have you got in there? Yeah, I think he thought I was stalking him at his place of work. I'll
tell you what, just that was when I did my first ever bit of commentary, not live on air, but it was the GP2 race on the Sunday or the Saturday, and the Saturday, and the team were just milling about in the commentary box, not doing anything, and then the producer, Chesy at the time, just said, "Jump on, Harry, have a go. We're not live, but just try commentating on it." I was god awful, so bad. I didn't like it. I knew the GP2 drivers were, but commentary was just so difficult. I was like, how can anybody do this?
Well, Ed Sheeran shared on, I think Graham Norton or something like that. He shared videos of him playing early on, and he said, "Look, that is not someone with like a God-given natural talent. That's where I started, and then I worked at it, and then I brought myself up to this level." But look, I know you think of yourself as a presenter, commentator, a useful idiot, and that you've got other experts around you. But by osmosis, I think you probably do know your thing. You know your stuff when it comes to F1. So I want to get your takes. We took a long guess at the top of the grid, and there's a lot of people incorrectly saying Aston Martin is second and Mercedes at eighth or whatever. I really have no idea where that's coming from, but I've screenshotted all the tweets. I've got the receipts for when you try and pretend that you didn't say Aston Martin were going to be championship contenders. Not you personally, Harry. Saying to everyone. But we never really looked at the bottom of the grid. So I thought I'd get your opinion on who you think are the bottom three teams in Formula One based on testing guesses, and why. Have you got a hot take?
I think AlphaTauri are last.
That's big.
Yeah, I just don't think we saw anything. They put in some good lap times over testing, but they had a bad year last year, and they just didn't have a great car, and the development rate wasn't very good. I don't think they've made that much of an inroad this year, or maybe they have, but in comparison to other teams, it's not enough. And I think, I rate their driver lineup. I think it's a make or break year for Yuki, but I think if he can keep it together, it will be fine. Nick De Vries, as we know, is hot property. I think thank God for Nick De Vries, because although he is a rookie, in quotation marks, he brings so much experience that he can bring to the team. But I think the loss of Pierre Gasly will be massive for them in terms of looking at a development direction and how to improve the team. And over testing, I think we saw a lot of their low fuel running times. I don't think we saw many on high fuel, which is when, as we all know, that's really the time you want. Anyone can set a fast lap time with no fuel in the car. And I think that's going to be...
yeah.
I think Aston Martin will be up there. I think they'll be top of midfield. Right. But I think bottom will be AlphaTauri is my hot take on that. I don't know. And then I think in the mix, I think Williams have made a step up by the looks of things. I still think they'll be towards the back, but I think they will be clinging, onto the Hasses and the Alfa Romeos, sort of on their coattails. With Alex Albon putting in some great drives on top of that.
So both those teams you've mentioned there are in a position where we don't really know where that driver lineup is gonna put them. So if you remember Williams a few years back, coming out the hybrid era, they found themselves with Sirotkin and Stroll at one point. Yeah. And it's not today's Stroll that you could well argue is a kind of a consistent midfield runner, useful number two. It was, a very raw Lance Stroll, and I don't think many people really rated Sirotkin either. And you wondered, that car was going out in Q1, race after race. You go, was that really only a Q1 car? You don't know. So if you've got Tsunoda and he's not firing, and if De Vries doesn't quite settle in, they could have a close battle between them. But it's always funny with these teams, and you go, well, how much is there on the table? A, in pure pace, and B, in development as well. You go, well, that could be damaging for a team that is being reportedly told, to improve or be sold.
Well, yeah, I agree with you, but I think Yuki is. I came into Formula One with a bit of a hype around him, and then that kind of became a little bit undone. But then I think it went the opposite way, and I think he was a bit underrated. Like, I think people I know the Abu Dhabi 2021 finale is obviously talked about for other reasons, but let's not forget Yuki came fourth, behind that battle.
Had forgotten that completely.
Yeah,
wow.
Yuki came fourth, and last year the car wasn't great, and towards the back end he was either matching Pierre Gasly or out qualifying him. And I think that went under the radar slightly. And Yuki, I recently spoke to his now performance engineer, Michael Italiano, who used to be Daniel Ricciardo's. And Michael was saying Yuki now loves, he's got his mindset right. He loves exercising and training. It's all he cares about, what he's doing the day. He's eating well. Yeah. He's moved to Italy to be close to the team. So I think it's all the right noises are coming out there. And then we heard over the course of testing that Nick De Vries has come in and shaken things up for how Faenza do things in their factory. And Franz Tost has been saying, he's made us rethink how we do some things and how we operate. So I think actually together it could be quite a fiery lineup. It's a kind of, I think somebody said this over the course of testing as well. It's a bit of a lose-lose situation for those drivers. Because if Yuki does great, then, Nick De Vries has more experience.
Is a rookie, so you just go, yeah.
But if Nick De Vries beats Yuki, then Yuki's going to be shown the door, right? Because he's been trounced by somebody who is brand new to that team at least and has much less F1 experience. So there's no outright winner here, I don't think. It's going to be a bit of a lose-lose. But I think write them off at your peril. I think they're both hungry, and the Red Bull pressure, I think, does put a bit of fire into you.
You just put them last, and then you're telling me not to write them off.
No, I think they'll be battling for P19 and P18 ferociously. Make sure you watch that battle.
Oh, I see. I'm with you.
But the thing is, you put them last, but I actually do think it's going to be really tight in that midfield. I think it's going to be. Could well be an Alfa Romeo plumb last at one point, but it could be as fast as the Haas that's in 6th because there's been some retirements or whatnot. But that's going to be the name of the game this year. I think it's going to be how do you get in front in qualifying? How can you stay there? And can you make use of any reliability issues? Although we've not seen that many in testing. Who knows?
Haven't actually.
So I think it's going to be tight, which I think is going to be great for Formula One in general. I worry about McLaren. They don't look great. And I worry they're going to be battling with the AlphaTauris a little bit, and the Williamses. Alpine are a bit of an unknown. Don't know about them, but McLaren is more obviously towards the back, and so I say McLaren, Williams, and AlphaTauri are my teams
for the bottom three. You're going to include McLaren in there, and I would disagree with you if it wasn't just for how glum Lando Norris looks and how snappy he looks in the interviews and things. And you go, they are not happy. He's looking at his contract probably now for loopholes and wondering if Audi can't just hurry up a little bit and get into Formula One. He didn't look pleased at all, and McLaren look like they've kind of made a habit of wrecking drivers' careers at the moment. I hate to be harsh, but think of the end of Button's career, a big chunk of Alonso's comeback that was supposed to be Ricardo. What the hell happened there? And then
Stoffel Van Dorn,
and then it's now. If you are Lando Norris, you're starting to go, oh, I'm going to be an old maid at some point here. All his mates have had shots in top cars, and it's just not happening for him.
If I'm Lando Norris, and I said this at the start of this year, I'm delivered another bad year this season, I'm on the phone to my old team principal, Andreas Seidel, and I'm going, what's the sitch with Audi? Can I join? And that's where I'm going, because realistically, I don't think there's many other options that are going to bring him what he wants, which is wins and championships.
And Ricardo's probably sat at home after that testing and gone, because he'd have been really gutted and sad, wouldn't he, that he was being shown the door, and he's probably had a difficult winter trying to reinvent himself, throw himself into his new role, and then watch testing and gone, yeah, that's okay. I'm all right.
How do you think Oscar's feeling though? He's, if Alpine proved to be a fourth best team again, and he's gone to McLaren.
Yeah.
Difficult, tricky timing. Although I read a lot into what Oscar Piastri was saying recently, how it's important to be wanted by a team. And I do think that goes a long way. It did kind of, Alpine, I think, made it out as if they put him in the car because Alonso left them and Oscar was there, so we may as well use him. That's the kind of vibe they gave off. And if I'm Oscar, I'm a bit like, well, McLaren really wanted me, so I'm going to go there. Yeah,
you want to be shown love, don't you? It's not, and money. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what the money involved is. But so if we're in our top, what was the other team you mentioned there? Williams again.
Williams,
yeah, they're a lineup though where I've never had my fan spirit tickled by Alex Albon. I've never really seen what is the result where people are really gunning for him and think he's a top driver, and then obviously with Sargent, we don't know anything about him. But when a billionaire enters F1, I kind of go, oh, okay, great. The bar for me to be impressed by a billionaire is a little higher. No offense if you're secretly a billionaire, Harry. I didn't ask. I didn't check.
Sadly not. No.
So there you go. Well, maybe that's not in the top 4 or 5 driver pairings in F1 as well. And for Williams, you go, maybe they could have been a bit more ambitious in their driver lineup.
Well, who would you have gone for?
Huh?
Who would you have gone for?
Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton
first.
Well,
there you go.
That's a good question. Who was available? Well, I mean, the likes of Piastri. Were there not better rookies that could come in?
To be fair, I heard Schumacher maybe was on the cards with Jost Capito, but then obviously Jost left. I think Alex has rebuilt himself, much like Pierre did after being ousted by Red Bull. I think Alex has learned probably quite a lot from being a reserve driver at Red Bull and watching Max Verstappen from the sidelines. I think he would have gained a lot from that alongside sort of being in the DTM team, because Alex was good when he came into AlphaTauri, Toro Rosso / AlphaTauri, before he got prematurely promoted. Like, he was good. Had a setback, much like Pierre, is rebuilding. And well, I mean, I know he was up against Latifi last year, but
yes.
But I think Alex is a good driver. Logan Sargent, we have no idea. You know, he had some decent F2 performances, but didn't win the championship. So you argue, well, why is the 6th place guy from Formula 2 last year in Williams and Felipe Drugovich isn't the champion? You know, but there's something that's been inherently wrong with the system for some time now. Yeah. So
could they not have got a Drugovich?
Well, I Drugovich maybe didn't have as much money as Sargent, and also now he's tied up with the Aston Martin development scheme, isn't he? So I'm sure there must have been conversations that took place, but Logan had joined the Williams Academy, 2 years ago, hadn't he? So they'd kind of put money into him, backing him through F3 and F2. So there's a bit of we need to see our money sort of pay in dividends here. So I think that's maybe the route. I'm excited by the lineup. I think it. We can speculate for all we like. I think Alex will achieve the maximum of that car. Logan will probably make some rookie mistakes, but he looked very capable in testing. All the rookies did. And I think together they might be quite a good pairing this year.
So I'm going to now do a bit of gatekeeping whilst talking to a current F1 commentator, right? Okay, so whilst understanding that what I'm about to do is ridiculous. So how we view Williams is probably very different. So I'm 42, you are like
25.
25. Ugh, jealous.
I'm 26 in 2 weeks.
Yeah, good. Yeah, 26 is kind of, you are fading and losing the magic of youth. So that pleases me.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah.
But the fact that Williams we're even talking about whether they might be 9th or maybe even 8th and hanging on to the tails of the back of the midfield. To me, that's a championship winning team. That is Mansell, that is Ayrton Senna, that's Prost. And to hear these kind of decisions they make with drivers is really sad for me. So when they had Sorokin and Stroll, to me, that team seemed to kind of the entity, the spirit of my Williams seemed to sort of fall away. But I really do want them to be the team that can go out and get, the real talent on the grid and not have to think about how much money that brings in. And it says to me, if they're still bringing in let's call it what it is, they're bringing in a paid driver, that if they're still in that position, perhaps the ambition isn't to drive forward as much as this 80s kid wants them to.
Yeah, I get it. I completely get it. I have a whole thing where, not everybody's a pay driver, in my opinion. So, money's got to come from somewhere, right? And, if you've got a rich dad, then great. Or if you're Lewis Hamilton, link up with a team. Obviously, the money sounds better if it's coming from a team.
Yeah, I'll fight back on that slightly, because I'll say that, to me, if you're a paid driver, if the money comes because of who you are, whereas if the money comes because of what you can do, I don't personally class that as a paid driver. So I think I need a different term. I try to use the term buy-in driver, and I should have used that.
Okay. Well, how do you look at Lando Norris?
And that's a really, really interesting one, because not a lot of people pick up on the fact that he bought in for his first seat in his first year of Formula One and did come in as a buy-in driver, but was also hyped up as a genuine talent and one of the most prepared young F1 drivers to enter the sport. And then he got to a point where McLaren, he takes a salary, he's not a buy-in driver anymore. So that's a really interesting one. You could argue then, was Lando Norris the best ever buy-in driver? And I'm sure people will say...
Well, look, I mean, Lando Norris was very well prepared, because he was able to afford to go testing when others couldn't in junior Formula. And he had a father who could buy him loads of new tyres, and he could just keep pounding in the laps with new tyres. And arguably, the more testing you do, the better you get. So it's really difficult to argue with a factor. That's why when you bring up Sergei Sorokin or people like that, I agree that era of Williams, the personality probably really kind of was sucked out of the team. But I try, and maybe this is the broadcaster in me, because I was a fan and I am still a fan, but I don't get attached to it. I'll always be attached to one driver in particular, but he's not an F1, so it's fine. But
Kobayashi, me. Yeah.
Yeah. Paul DeResta. But he is very controversial. But he Sorokin, I think, and people like that, I think it's, you can't judge. Like, it's a rich man's sport, unfortunately, and it always has been. Let's not kid about that. And I don't judge, and if they perform well, then suddenly you forget they're a paid driver, don't you?
Right.
And that's and if they've got a good personality like Lando, you forget they're a buy-in driver, as you say.
Buy-in driver. So I'll work on the phrasing, but yeah. So at every level, every driver was a buy-in driver at some point. So Lewis Hamilton buying his own go-karts at that level was a buy-in driver, and that would have put him beyond certainly like my circumstances as a kid. We wouldn't have been able to jump up to that. So yeah, there's a scale of how high are you gonna buy in, or can you buy in until you can convince someone ultimately to pay you to do it. And the best example of that is Lando Norris having got all the way to F1 and then getting picked up for a drive, because a lot of the buy-in drivers fall away after a few years or after a couple of years.
Exactly. And maybe with the exception of, Lance Stroll is a really interesting case because he has proven that he can be on pole positions, he can get podiums, and he can score points. But unfortunately, the fact that his dad bought a team for him and he will race there for the rest of his career until his dad leaves or until Lando decides he can't be asked to do it anymore. That is a unique situation, I think.
Lance.
Oh, Lance.
We mixed up our billionaires there, didn't we?
Until Lance decides he doesn't want to do it anymore. That's a really unique situation.
And it just shows with unprecedented and unlimited funds and practice and resources, you can get to the point where you can be like pretty good. Like in the scale of all F1 drivers that have existed, he's pretty high on his general ability. And I think there would be a case if you were a new team coming in and you were looking around the driver market, you had your young gun, your Alex Albon or whatever, your Pierre Gasly, that's a better example, that you wanted to drive the team forward. I think there's a case you could go, right, Stroll is a consistent marker. We know his ability, bring him in. He can be a useful driver to the team. So like for him to come from where he was to that is good, but no other driver in history would have had the time, resources, and space to be able to get to that level.
Totally. And it's a fascinating subject that you can debate till the cows come home, really, and will be continued to be debated throughout the years until, Nico Rosberg, where did his money come from? He grew up in Monaco. His dad was obviously a Formula One driver, but he became a champion. So yeah, it's really difficult to gauge it. I just think don't judge until they've performed on track. Simple as.
Okay. Do you know what? It's been very nice to meet you, Harry, and we've had a very
but that's enough.
We've had a yeah, but get out of my shed. But I don't know, we've been reasonably polite. We're getting to know each other here. I think you and me could have a really good row at some point if we let the gloves off. So you are welcome back into the shed to tell me when I'm wrong on any subject anytime.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, mate.
Oh, where can people go and follow you and stuff? We need to hype up your Twitter account.
Absolutely.
Your Instagram.
I'm on all of it. Twitter, Instagram. I'm a TikToker.
Are you now?
I do TikToks. Yeah. It's I'm Harry Benjamin. I am Harry Benjamin on pretty much everything. So find me there on all the various things.
Oh yeah, I am Harry Benjamin on Twitter.
I couldn't have I am, so I went for I'm.
And
so
what we'll do
Harry Benjamin
is we'll have all the links to your social media in the show notes so that our viewers and listeners can go and find you, as I think everyone should, and look forward to seeing you on the feeder series commentary. I believe you're doing quite a lot of races this season, so we won't be short of hearing a Benjamin voice.
No, I'll be popping up on all sorts of various things. So forgive me in advance for that.
Thank you very much, Harry Benjamin.
Cheers, mate.